Hi, welcome to today's episode of Unapologetic Living. I am excited to have Megan Teed of Scoliologic. She's the owner of Scoliologic, but you may know her as the scoliotherapist on social media. I found Megan through Instagram and am super excited because more recently I have been digging a little bit deeper into the impact scoliosis has on my particular body and in finding Instagram and all the scoliosis warriors on Instagram, which has been amazing. I came across your work. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk all things scoliosis.
So, can you tell me a little bit about your story? I know that I read you were diagnosed, I believe, at 11.
Mhm. Yep. So probably pretty typical story of a lot of people. They did the screening in our middle school gym class, kind of the Adams test, bending forward, reaching for your toes, and they diagnosed me. They sent me to my primary care physician, and he took x-rays and said, "Oh, well, it's not bad enough to do anything about it. We'll just kind of wait and see if it gets worse. We'll monitor it and take x-rays I think it was every year for me." So that's what they did until I stopped growing. I think around age 16, they released me and they're like, "You'll never have to worry about this again. You're done growing. Growth plates are fused and you're good to go." And um, I really didn't have much trouble with my scoliosis. Um, had a little bit of trouble with it in dance. I grew up dancing ballet and we would do arabesques. And do you know anything about ballet?
I took ballet when I was a little kid, but
Yeah, yeah. So like kind of that extension out to the back with your leg. I started to get like those weird like pinching feeling in my back. My doctor sent me to a chiropractor and they would crack my back and put me on E-stim and heat and never give me any exercises. Not sure if that helped me get better or if time just helped. And yeah, other than that, I honestly didn't really have much pain. Um, in graduate school, when I went to PT school, I actually didn't like I kind of went because of my scoliosis, but I also just went because I loved movement and grew up moving, grew up doing Pilates too. So um in PT school, we didn't really learn much about scoliosis. And it wasn't until probably 4 years into my career that I even learned that there was anything specific that I could do about my scoliosis. So I was asked by somebody local to be their case study for a specialization they were getting doing Pilates for scoliosis. And I was like, yeah, I didn't even know. So I got really excited about that and learned a ton about my own body through that process. And then that's kind of initiated my whole interest in specializing in it.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just started digging. I had my spinal fusion at 12.
hmm
I didn't really think that much of it. And at 11 and 12, it wasn't anything that I was experiencing. It was I think it was my great aunt, and I had a bathing suit on. We had a pool in our backyard, and she's like, said to my mother, because my great aunt and my mother both have scoliosis, neither with this fusion. And I bend her over, her back looks funny, whatever. And
Yeah.
it's one thing led to another. And then I don't know how important the spinal fusion was at that time. My parents had two different um, opinions, and they decided to do this fusion. And I don't know, I'm 46. I'm not sure how old you are, but definitely chiropractic and yoga and Pilates. You didn't see a lot of that here in Kentucky 30 some odd years ago. And so
Mhm.
this was just the next best thing. I didn't really have a lot of pain and discomfort until after the surgery, and
Mm-hmm.
certain movements like hip flexion in my left side became incredibly painful. And that's like my one triggering spot.
Yeah.
Um, but
Did
it,
they have you do therapy or anything after your fusion?
oh, that's the thing. There was so much going on in our family life at that time. My mother was undergoing breast cancer treatments that they can't remember.
No.
So, I know that I had the surgery and a year later we were skiing out west and, in Colorado mountains. So they can't even remember, neither parent can really remember what they even limited me from.
Mm-hmm.
I did a brace for 6 months, the big hard plastic brace with Velcro down the sides.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously that in and of itself is very uncomfortable and restricts mobility.
Mm-hmm.
But moving has definitely been always something that's just been a part of my life. So I can understand. And maybe it was just intuitive for you without knowing it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let it
Yeah.
just work.
Mm-hmm.
But I just found the Schroth method and these other methods.
Yeah, there's so many. Yeah.
Like,
So I
oh my
have
God.
since gone on and done some Schroth training as well, which has been amazing just to kind of layer on like different thought processes and um, ways to tackle things. And I've I've learned applied neurology and some visceral work as well. And that's not specific to scoliosis, but anatomy is anatomy. So if it applies to somebody with a symmetrical spine, there's things that you can kind of layer on and conclude for somebody that has scoliosis as well.
Yeah, one of the most uh, recent podcasts of yours that I listened to was on digestion.
Mm-hmm.
And hadn't heard anybody else talk about it, which was so reassuring because I've struggled with digestion my whole life. Not my whole life. I didn't really notice it till after my babies were born, but I have a hiatal hernia
Mm-hmm.
and the acid reflux you mentioned. It's just like, but when I saw the GI doc, they looked at me like I had three heads when I even suggested, do you think it could be because or something is different because my spine is crooked?
Yeah, it's very linear and like black and white for traditional medicine. I don't I don't think that they're really taught to think outside the box other than what exactly they're taught in medical school. So to come to different conclusions about things, I don't know if they're afraid to say yes, it could be connected, or I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, and then also, I know, so I just recently have been taking this course and it's called Vaginal Kung Fu. It's a course with Kim Anami. It's a virtual course, and a lot of it is on sexual and reproductive health.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that came up for me, which I started to wonder about, it seemed to all be coinciding together because I started Schroth treatment and he's like, oh, you're not even breathing. You teach yoga, you're not even breathing into your diaphragm. We got to get you breathing different and de-rotate you and all these things. And so I'm like elongating and breathing and she's teaching breathing. And then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if, and like in 2014, I saw this womb massage practitioner and she told me my uterus was off to the right.
Well,
Mm,
what do you think? That's
right.
dumb.
So then I started wondering, well, like, how is that impacting, my pelvic floor? So I'm sure I'm not the only one with
Right. Right.
scoliosis. And if especially if, one hip's rotated towards the back or pulls backwards, one's forward. And I'm shifted, I have a what, 3C.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
but, and so, and I don't even have enough information to go much further than that as to what a 3C curve is. And so, but I do know that, how does scoliosis affect the pelvic floor?
Yeah. Well, so we are a canister. If you think about just the core as a unit, it's not just one muscle that makes up the core. It's uh, your diaphragm that sits on top. You have your transverse abdominis that runs along the front, which are your deep, deep abdominal muscles. And then you have your multifidi, which run along the back. They're your deep, deep back muscles. And then you have your pelvic floor that sits at the bottom. So all of those act as a pressurized unit together. And in somebody with a symmetrical spine, it's a bit easier to tap into those even pressures because things are symmetrical. But for somebody with an asymmetrical spine, you have the rotational element of it, and then you have the side bending element of it. So it's three-dimensional. If you imagine just like wringing out a towel, that's a similar thing that's happening to that canister. So the more that we're able to come more into a dynamic alignment where that's more centered, the better those pressures will be, and then the less strain there will be on your pelvic floor.
So, what types of pelvic floor dysfunction might you find with someone or complaints,
Mhm.
someone who does have scoliosis?
Yeah, I see a lot of people with pelvic organ prolapse because those pressures are not the greatest. It allows things to drop more easily instead of kind of staying contained. And then pelvic floor pain. So then you have pain with sex and pain, just kind of in general with running. You tend to leak a little bit more because you're a little bit tighter. And it's not necessarily that the whole entire length of the pelvic floor is tight. Like probably part of it is a little bit tight, part of it is a little bit lax.
Right.
So that plays into it as well. Those
Oh,
are the two
yeah,
most things that
right.
I.
Piece. Just like, yeah, that makes so much sense. Because when you're right, you've got your tighter side, right? The
Mhm.
overstretched, and then the sort of, I don't want to say weaker,
Right. It's so you have the shortened side and then you have the lengthened side.
right?
So
And so, of
we,
course, that would travel down.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, everything is connected.
Yeah. So, and I just think that's fascinating that, when you first get this scoliosis diagnosis, you don't necessarily, no one is actually talking about these other
Mm-mm.
aspects of your body.
Yeah. And I've found that that's the case even in traditional physical therapy. What I've come to learn is we tend to always look at the muscles and the bones as the culprit for why somebody's having pain or having dysfunction in their body. But in reality, there's a hierarchy in our body. We have our nervous system, your brain, which is like the top tier of the hierarchy. And then you have your organs and your muscles and your bones. They are created to protect your organs on the inside. So you're not necessarily going to get pain in your liver or pain in your kidney. You're more likely to get musculoskeletal pain that's referred from those areas. Um, that is a signal that something's going on in your body.
Right. So, and it was hard for me to, gosh, I'd never even heard of a PT, and I've been seeing a PT all last year for something else,
Mhm.
my neck. And
Yeah.
not once, I'm telling you, did I he ever like really think about the rest of my back.
Yeah. Yeah. And your neck tends to be like a weather vane. So like when pain or something shows up in the neck, it's usually an indication that something else is awry in the body.
And that would that be with anything
Hmm.
or just not, you're not just talking specific to scoliosis now. If
I'm,
something's off in the neck, something is off somewhere else.
mhm.
Now, do you just work with scoliosis patients?
No, I see everything. Scoliosis is my specialty though. That's probably what I see like 90% of the time. But I work with all conditions. So I do a bit with like balance conditions, neurological conditions, um, the vestibular system, and then I also see some pre and postnatal people as well. Yeah.
Mhm. And then when you see clients, I know you have a podcast yourself, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's called The Scoliotherapist.
It's actually called Ahead of the Curve.
Oh, Ahead of the Curve. That's right. And then what a great name.
Yeah.
And you do you see clients virtually?
Yeah, so I see a lot of people virtually that don't have access to a scoliosis specialist where they live.
Mhm.
Uh, I usually try to encourage people, like if you have somebody local to you, you should try and see them. But there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that don't have somebody that they can go and physically see. So I saw a need for that, and I've created a small group coaching program for people that's 6 months long and really takes you through the different elements of scoliosis specific movement. So the elongation, the organization, like stacking the spine, breathing, and then strengthening.
And you do that online when you say group, that's something online, but then you also,
Mhm.
yeah, there's only 4 people in our state, scoliosis specific, and only 2 work with adults.
Yeah.
Most of the people, well, of the 4, yeah, they all work with kids. And I know the gentleman that I see, he said he still predominantly sees mostly children,
Hmm.
like 11 to 19.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so now, do you see a lot of improvement in your clients who are older, a more aging population?
I do. So they're less likely to get the repeated x-rays, which I mean, I don't blame people for not getting multiple x-rays. You're exposing yourself to radiation kind of unnecessarily. Um, but I take progress photos of people. So just yesterday, I retook some photos of a client I've been working with, and it was her 10th visit. And she was like, man, I haven't been like the most consistent with my exercises. I don't know how these are gonna be. And so I took them, and she was like, oh my gosh, I wasn't even like trying to be in my corrections. I was just standing, and she was just so much more symmetrical. And it's really learning about your curve and what your tendencies are, and then just weight shifts in your body can make such a big difference in the way that you're holding yourself, the way that you're feeling, and then also that dynamic alignment. It just kind of clicks into place when you are stacked on top of yourself.
Yeah, you start to even like I noticed, and he took measurements of me yesterday actually, and he saw some improvement with my rotation. And I don't always do everything every single
Yeah.
day. It's a lot. These have been the most challenging exercises
Hmm.
ever done. Honestly, I mean they are hard
Yeah.
because I'm trying to do this, and I feel so, it doesn't feel I don't feel aligned. I'm like,
Yeah.
this, my mouth is doing one thing. It's like, okay, straight. You know what I mean? Because
Uh-huh.
you're right. And so it's definitely rewarding to see, but I also said at 46, I might see, the results might be slower. And he really
Yeah.
isn't sure with my spinal fusion. We're just working with the upper curve.
Mhm.
I know for me, I've struggled with some body image issues along the way with scoliosis. Do you find that you have a lot of, I know a lot more women and girls are affected than men, but regardless, do you find that you have clients that struggle with the same type of
Yeah.
personal issues around their?
Yeah, I do discovery calls with people just to kind of see if it's a good fit to work together. And probably one of the most common things I hear, other than pain, that people are struggling with is body image and um, not wanting to wear like a two-piece swimsuit because one side dips in, not wanting to wear spaghetti straps because their shoulders are so asymmetrical, or even like being intimate with their partner, with their spouse. And um, it's it's something where it's not talked about a whole lot in the actual like trainings that we do, that like, oh, well, this is a priority, but it is a priority for people because it affects so much of your life. It trickles down into your career, the way you show up for your family, the way you show up for yourself. And um, I do find that as people learn more about their own body and they get more of that autonomy with their condition, that all of that kind of falls more into place where they're feeling more confident in the way that they appear. Like I can kind of see it in the way that they change their clothes for therapy. Like they start off wearing like a baggy t-shirt, and then more towards the end of working together or later into our work, they start wearing more fitted stuff. And, you can just kind of tell in the way that they carry themselves that all improves over time.
Yeah, it's definitely been something. I know I'll see these things on racks. Oh, and you'd love them. And then you put them on, you're like, oh, I don't love that anymore. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
everything that you said about the spaghetti straps, and like I could, my inner critic comes out, and when you have one rib cage that's coming out, right, one arm
Mm-hmm.
forward, and then on the other side, I could say about more armpit fat I don't like, and you know what I mean? And so it's
Yeah.
like really trying to learn to love our body as it is. And for me, I think that's going to be an ongoing thing forever. Um, and I'm sure anybody, I mean, it's probably something everybody deals with.
Mhm.
Um, it just feels like an extra
Yeah.
piece,
Yeah.
that others don't have to think about. And then also, it definitely changes probably the way I physically move, or activities I choose or don't choose. It doesn't really do that for me, but I do know it seems like many of the stories I've read more recently that a lot of people have been far more heavily impacted in what they can do or don't do because
Mhm.
of their back. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah.
I And is that like whether somebody told them not to be doing those things, or something that they are just inferring that maybe they shouldn't do? Um, I'm always a little curious about that because, you get doctors that tell you, oh, you can never lift heavy weights, or you can never do yoga, you can never ride a roller coaster. What did I hear the other day? You can never run again. And I had, yeah, somebody that their doctor told them that, and she had to run in the airport. And the whole time she was freaking out that she was like damaging her back. And I mean, it's your life that those words are affecting. it's not just a moment in time. It's a moment in time for that doctor, but I mean, geez, words are very powerful.
They are. I did have, so I drive Lyft and Uber in my free time sometimes. And I had a spine surgeon that I was driving somewhere told me I should never run. And now that was in the last like 6 or 8 years. I don't run a lot. I used to run and I ran, 3 half marathons with my back, like that was in my early 20s, but I had never heard it. And then again, just reading some of these Instagram stories of what they have been told. I mean, I my parents couldn't remember. We were skiing, like not even a year later. And I don't,
Mhm.
like I had a baby at home. Now my mom's oncologist and did encourage no epidural. And I don't know
Yeah.
your thoughts on that. And so I didn't have an epidural. I had one baby in a hospital, no epidural, and then another and it made sense. So,
Yeah, that definitely is person to person.
mm,
I do see that people who have a larger lumbar curve, they have a harder time getting an epidural than people with the thoracic curve. But again, it's case by case scenario. That's something you have to
yeah.
work with the doctor on. And it sounds like you had a successful birth without it, or,
Yeah,
was
I
it?
mean, I think so. They both almost grown.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Wasn't too traumatizing without it.
no, not too trauma. I mean, it was rough, but definitely worth it. I definitely valued that experience, and I'm glad that was the message my mom got from her oncologist.
Mhm.
I don't, I didn't set out to have that. That wasn't what I was thinking, but I'm really grateful I did, uh, and it was an amazing experience. But again, I know everybody's unique and individual, so it's going to look different for different people. So if someone wants to work with you or find your group classes, where are you exactly, actually?
I'm in Bluffton, South Carolina.
Oh,
So
you're down in the Carolinas?
yeah, yeah. I'm like right near Hilton Head Island, Savannah, Georgia. So good little spot to visit if you're on vacation and come do an intensive with me.
Well, my,
Yeah.
my son went to school at Coastal Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
He
That's so
would
close.
he
Yeah.
would drive down
Charleston, right?
Conway near Myrtle Beach, closer to Myrtle.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know why
Yeah.
I thought that was in Charleston, but okay. So
Uh,
close.
yeah.
Like,
And but gosh, what a beautiful part of the country. Well, we
yeah.
drive down there from Kentucky to see him, and it's only like 10 hours. So you're probably not that far a car ride.
Yeah. I'm like 4 hours from Myrtle.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, where do they find you? I got sidetracked with your
Oh,
location.
that's okay. I'm the scoliotherapist.com. You can just check out my website. I'm the scoliotherapist on Instagram. And then I have a YouTube channel, the scoliotherapist. I actually have a free masterclass coming up May 11th. I don't know when this will air, but feel free to join that. You will learn everything that you need to know about how to care for your spine with scoliosis, spinal fusion, and how to exercise and adapt things for your body.
Oh, that sounds awesome. So that's May 11th.
May 11th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you can't join live, which I recommend trying to join live if you can to get your answers to your questions, there will be a recording that I'll send out. So
So
if
people
you're,
will actually be able to interact.
yeah,
Okay. And will the live be on YouTube or on Instagram or?
The live is going to be actually on Zoom. So if you're registered, we'll all be hopping on a Zoom together and going about it that way.
Well, that
Yeah.
sounds awesome. I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
check that out. That is on a Saturday.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
just in time. My son comes home for 13 days on the 13th, so I
Fun.
can. maybe check that out. That will be good. Uh,
Yeah.
how do you feel like, do you feel like, does your scoliosis bother you today?
I have moments when I'm sitting for too long. Traveling can be a pain, but I know how to get myself out of it, which is so powerful to have those tools. Like I know that that feeling isn't forever. So movement is your friend.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And do you find you have certain triggering spots that it's always the same little kink or,
Yeah, I find that my prominence, it's like usually just more of like a fatigue feeling. Like if I've been kind of resting on my prominence or standing for a while in one spot, it gets tired.
Mhm.
Uh, and then sometimes my SI joint on that same side where my main prominence is, it can act up too. So those are my problem areas, but honestly, I'm relatively pain free, so I can't complain too much.
well, that's awesome.
Mhm.
If you guys are curious, be sure to check out Megan's work at thescoliotherapist.com, YouTube, The Scoliotherapist, Instagram, The Scoliotherapist, and register for her free masterclass on May 11th.
Yeah, yeah, come join us.
Is
And
there
that's Eastern time
Eastern
at
time?
10.
Is there anything
Yep.
else you want to add before?
I would say just when you are trying to find advice about how to manage your condition, whether that's scoliosis or spinal fusion, if the things that you are reading are inciting fear in you, make sure that you continue to search because there is a lot of hope and you can live a really full life with scoliosis without a lot of fear and limitation.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, the fear is not a faithful approach, is it? It just doesn't
No, yeah,
surrender to, um, hoping that the best will take place.
exactly. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you.
You too.